Entry barrier can be anything that stops other people from entering into your space. Let me help you understand with a couple of examples or a couple of types. Now, it can be technological entry barrier. For example, we have all heard of this classical example that Google was not the first search engine, but that was like 20 years ago. If you see today, Google is such a big technology giant that you can't create another Google today. So technology barrier has given Google that leverage that nobody else can create Google now, right? Another entry barrier can be ability to operate at a very, very efficient and a high level model. Let's look at an example of Uber. Why people love Uber or Ola is not because you get a nice car, but you get it quickly. So it is not getting the car or the product, the app, but it is the time period in which you get the car. So the commitment from Ola and Uber is that you will get the car under 10 minutes. So again, Uber has an operational advantage. So that operational advantage kind of became an entry barrier here. Now, if you look at both of them individually, a collective entry barrier is funding or the ability to spend money. Right? The biggest example of this is, let us say, look at telecom space, right? Now, telecom in pre-Jio era was dominated by likes of Airtel and Vodafone and Idea, and there are a couple of smaller and bigger players here and there, right? What Jio did, they literally dumped 10,000 crores in the market and changed the telecom industry in India forever. Now, that's the power of creating an unfair advantage or an entry barrier for a new player. Now, today, India is almost like a duopoly when it comes to telecom. You have Jio and you have Airtel, and then a couple of small players here and there, but almost everybody else is either dead or have merged into becoming smaller companies together, right? Now, imagine anybody else now trying to get into telecom space. You need to have tons and tons of capital to get into the space. So that's another entry barrier Jio has created. At the end of the day, then funding or ability to deploy capital at a massive amount becomes an entry barrier. Another entry barrier can be your brand positioning in people's mind, which of course will not happen on day one, which will happen over a period of time, but that's a great entry barrier you can create. Look at examples of iPhone, look at example of a brand like Nike, look at example of a brand like Starbucks, right? Now you can have mixed opinion about an iPhone or a Nike or a Starbucks, but each one of them are basically leader in their space, and that brand recall value, brand loyalty, and that brand positioning they've created has again created an entry barrier in people's mind. One entry barrier which is also there, which most of people don't look and is not publicly visible, is the ability to protect your IP and protect your intellectual property. Or I would rather say IP and research and innovation. One big example of this we saw when ChatGPT literally took off and everybody was crazy about generative AI. Nobody, or rather a few people started noticing that the ability to make faster AI and ability to run those machine models happened because NVIDIA was able to supply those high GPUs to run those complex computer applications, and therefore NVIDIA suddenly became like $1 trillion company and the shares skyrocketed. Now, ability to innovate, ability to protect that intellectual property, ability to do that research and innovation is also a huge entry barrier. So despite AMD being an older company, NVIDIA, which is a newer company than AMD in terms of the timeline, is a bigger company than AMD, and AMD can't catch up with them. So that also becomes an entry barrier. So to summarize, basically there are 5 sort of entry barriers that you can think of: technology entry barrier, operational entry barrier, capital entry barrier, brand positioning entry barrier, and last but not least is a innovation or a IP entry barrier. If you have one of these, great, but most of business have a combination of 2 or 3, and that gives them like a fair advantage in the market.